On today's show, the book is We Should All Be Feminists. And I have to apologize up front. I cannot pronounce the author's name. So Afi, please help me out.
Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
For this one, ladies, we will be looking at feminism. Grab your cups. It's time for The Tea. All right, ladies, let's just dive right into this. So we're going to let Nigeria start this conversation.
Yes, because I definitely have some tea to spill, and I have an issue. Whose book was this?
Afi.
My recommendation, yes.
Your recommendation got me into some trouble. Okay? Your recommendation got me into some trouble. And it's so funny. In the book, she talks about how they say in Africa, in her homeland in Nigeria, that if you're a feminist, you can't get married. It's not good for your marriage. So I'm sitting down in my house. I'm going through the book. I'm reading the book. And my husband's like, what are you doing? What are you reading? I'm like, oh, I'm reading a book. It's good. It's really good. And so he's like, yeah, what book is that? I said, We Should All Be Feminists. I ain't going to be no feminist. You better put that away right now.
Oh, my goodness.
And we spent the whole evening not speaking, because I was sitting down reading my book, and he was like, "We're not doing that here today, sister."
This is why it's an important conversation to be had, because again, it is so loaded. Even the definition of being a feminist, everyone has a different take on it. Even when you read the book, and even when you say, okay, this is what a feminist is, a person who believes in the equality between men and women, it causes so much. And I remember when I recommended this book, I called it the F word, because it really is like dropping the F-bomb in any conversation. And again, I wanted to have a conversation with all of us about the practicality of this word. And is this something that we can embrace, or that we should be embracing as women, and as Black women, as women of 2017. So I'm happy to know that, again, at least it sparked something, because I was right on that one. It's going to spark something.
Well, I think it would be interesting to know how people define it, because to me, I see this book, I think it could be even shorter. The answer is, of course. Let's keep it moving. You know, it depends on what you think of being a feminist is. Right. And to me, it's just human rights. It's believing that women have basic human rights, the same human rights. And like, to me, I can't even understand why someone would not be a feminist.
It's interesting because the part when she mentions in the book, what if a man, usually a man is told he's responsible for paying the bills. You know, that's masculinity. So she did say, what if we took that equation out? Well, this is going to seem like a silly barrier. And I said, you know, maybe it'll stop the stigma of men. What if we took everything out? That a man is supposed to be courteous, hold the door for a woman. It would just be so funny and weird, you know?
Well, I'm
it's
sorry.
Just an idiot.
I'm a Southern belle, baby. I'm from the South. Feminism got a thin line.
I know,
Yes,
I know.
I'm going to have my power, but I still want him to open the door.
Exactly.
And I still want him to pay for the check.
Yes.
So I'm sorry. That's what I'm saying. It's like, I mean, I got it.
Right.
But I'm like, I'm sorry.
Right.
The Southern belle in me came straight out.
I agree with you. Will it break down all barriers? It's interesting. Will a man say, no, you hold the door. I got you got it. Will he say, I'm not going to pull out pulling out the chair now. I don't want to get into that topic. That's not too often it happens, but you get my point. The point is, will it break down all barriers of, you know?
But I still think that that's a conversation.
But that's cultural too, because
Yes,
you can have some societies where women have very low rank and nobody holds the door for you. You walk behind, you sit at the feet, and you know the men are not chivalrous. That type of chivalry is our culture.
Yes.
And that's our paradigm of gender dynamics, but that's very different than feminism, because you can have a different flavor.
Well, I promise you, when I heard it, all I thought of ooh, that means I can take my bra and burn it. But you know, it's like, that's the silly side of it. But then it's like, when you really start to think about it, it's like, what do we do in these gender situations? Because we're raising, because the same thing she said about boys and girls, how we raise them differently. I mean, I seen it in my household. You got brothers. Did you see it different because it was like 2 girls and a boy? Right?
Yes,
did I say that
I
right?
did.
Did I remember right?
That is exactly right. My brother is definitely a prince. He didn't have to do laundry or dishes or anything like that. And to this day, I think he still struggles. So he most definitely does. But yeah, definitely raised differently. He can have his video games, and my sister and I, we had strict parents, but growing up, we fought over who was going to sweep and who held the dustpan. We fought over who gets to wash the windows versus the mirrors. My mom tricked us. We thought it was a game cleaning up. We thought it was amazing. But at the same now I realize that's how we were raised. The girls are going to clean up, and you know, the boys go downstairs and play video games, watch movies.
But that's in our society, because when you look at even toys for young girls and young boys, there are toy vacuums, there are toy mops, there are toy kitchens, and then there are toy fire trucks, and then there are toy police cars, and you dress up like a police officer, and you dress up like a princess, and you dress up like a mom, and you dress up, you know, get by the baby, and we are training them even as young children. These are the roles you're going to have in society, and it is a role that is based on gender and kind of, you know, and some of it you want to strip away, and some of it, like Deborah said, I want to keep. When she talks about, you know, it's so hard, it's so difficult making this young man have to pay. If you want to take me somewhere, then you got to pay.
You gonna pay.
That's like,
I'm not paying. I'm sorry to say.
Exactly.
But then what about the other side?
I agree
What
with you.
about if, so you're saying that if a man invites you out to dinner, then he should be paying. Because you said he invited you, but what if you invited him?
I wouldn't.
I do, but you know what? But I agree with what she said in the book.
I chime in. Last week that happened. I swear. It's not good to swear, but okay, let's just say I'm telling the truth. I invited my male friend. I said, you want to see girls trip? And I hinted to him. He was like, you know, do you want to go? At that time, I'm not going to lie, I didn't have the funds. But I was like, you know, I'm not going to go because I don't have the funds. I didn't expect him to pay because I invited him. You understand what I'm saying? And I don't want him to always feel I'm a man. He's that kind that he would pay, and I don't want him to always pay for me. So, you know, you have to.
I'm sorry. I want him always to pay for me.
That's hard for me. So it's difficult.
So I see what you're saying. And Nigeria, you were finishing up saying, what were you trying to say? Because I know we all kind of got in there really quick. This is a heated subject. So it's like I see both sides. But what were you saying? Because I think you're the only one married of the bunch this time.
I am?
Are you? Yeah, you're the only married one. Come on, bring it. Spill the tea.
Let me know. What is it like?
Let us know.
And so, well, for me, even being married, like when we go have date night, I'm still like, you're still paying. You want me. You've got me. Now you need to keep me. And I'm not one of those people who, like in the book, she talks about how young girls are raised. The only thing like to want to have is to be married. Yeah. I was raised in a household where there was no marriage. My mother was a single mother, and she was like, if you smart girl, you will never get married. Okay, so I'm kind of like, I'm not the smart one. But
That's very interesting. That's interesting.
And then you know what? But I hear that a lot from a lot of my friends that grew up in single households, they look at me as different because I grew up in a household with both parents. I think one of the biggest things is that we don't ever want to fall into, and I think it's cultural as well, emasculating the man that we're with. Because I can remember going out with some friends, and he has kids, and so I knew he didn't have the money. So what I did, and like I think somebody, is that I slid him the money. I knew he didn't have it, but I didn't want his kids to know that he didn't have it, and we were all out. So it's kind of like, did I lose my role? Did I was I a feminist, or was I helping him save face? What was I doing?
I don't think that's losing your role. You're just being a friend.
Would you have done that for a female friend?
And I think that's the question. Would I have done that? Because the thing is, I think if we were out with the girls, it wouldn't be looked at the same thing. I would have just paid it. I just did hair. I would have just popped the card down because I think the kids wouldn't have been looking at it as the same. but I think that goes big with the rules that we put on.
I agree. It's not a big thing for me. I don't put that in any feminist category.
But I
It's
wouldn't
just-
have, but
right.
like she said,
Some
I wouldn't
people
have
would.
slid, like if Janelle and I were out and she didn't have the money and she had kids, I'd have just paid for it. I wouldn't have asked no questions. It would have been like card, cash, whatever. But she asked but it was different because I was with a man.
Right. I understand that all. Of course.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, that's about him, also him saving face. Because I mean, women, we talk about emasculation, but women all the time have to take on roles in our culture that are traditionally the male ones, like supporting the family, coming up with the money. So you know, he's emasculated, then what does that make you when you're providing the funds?
Janelle.
Yes, ma'am.
You are the youngest one of the bunch. And we're gonna go to you. How do you see feminism? How do you see emasculation? How do you see this book, period? What are your thoughts?
I know, it's very exciting to read this. So what I take away from this book is the definition of feminism.
Okay.
That is different for every single person, male, female, whatever your gender is. And what I really think is interesting is the difference between feminism and what we have in the US is Black feminism.
Wow.
When I first think of feminism, growing up, our textbook version that we see in the high school is feminism talking about the suffrage movement. We're talking about women being able to join the workforce, going to engineering and doing whatever you can, World War II. But at the same time, we need to recognize that Black feminism is a different subset of feminism.
Exactly.
Because we think about the suffrage movement in the 1920s, women earned the right to vote. Incorrect, because Black women didn't earn the right to vote, all Black women, until 1964. That's insane. That's what I take away from this, because she's in Nigeria and she's talking about feminism in that place, that's where she's from. But here in the US, we can go talk about Black Lives Matter, but at the same time, if you go to a women's movement march in DC, they're going to be two different perspectives.
Right.
Two different people. You're going to have Black people who were in the Black Lives Matter march going to the women's, but you're not going to have people who go to the women's march go to Black Lives Matter march, which Black Lives Matter includes women's rights. So that's what's really interesting in that. I'm reading this, but I would have loved to see digging into how race plays into feminism. Because it's definitely different, and feminism does not cover every single woman, which is really hurtful, but it really shows, especially in the US, especially here under Trump.
Exactly. Ooh,
Oh, girl,
and then
yes,
and you know what? That is a perfect segue into where I think we should start taking this conversation, because you were talking about how African American women are perceived, but what about in the workforce? Because I am so tired. And I think it needs to be said. Men are perceived one way, women are perceived another way, and it's like we have a glass ceiling. I'll never forget, I had an African American principal who would say, "Am I looking okay? Do I have to do this? Do I have to do this? Can I do this?" And I was like, why are you doing this? And why does it matter? I said, because if it was another male perspective or male principal, he wouldn't be worrying about that. I'm tired of that. So what has been y'all's experiences in the workforce as far as talking about being a feminist, or what's going on? What's going on out there with you guys? Because we all come from multiple backgrounds. Offie, you read. I see you like, yeah, I got this one.
Well, I wanted to introduce a concept called womanism. And womanism is really, I guess, the more academic term for Black feminism, and it encompasses, again, a lot of the issues that Black women are facing in terms of our family dynamics and our relationship with society. So that's a more, again, encompassing term. Now, in the workforce, though, as women across the board, we are still earning significantly less amount of money for putting in the same amount of work, and I would say even more work. As women, we still have to be mindful of coming across as aggressive, or coming across as too timid. We are constantly going back and forth with this dynamic in places that we've earned the right to be in. Again, we have the education, we have the experience, we have the intelligence, but at the end of the day, we are all facing this wall. It's an unspoken wall where, again, we have to conform. And for me, it splits my mind, because it's like, what version of myself is gonna be more effective?
Wow.
As opposed to just being doing my job. I have to, I have to navigate this. And then when we add the race dynamic to it, it literally is this dynamic, it splits you.
That is like so amazing.
And I think it comes down to, you know, in terms of whether or not you use the definition of feminist, of whether or not you think you're worthy of the prizes. I mean, a lot of the women I grew up with, my mom worked, she was a doctor, she was very independent, she was very anti-feminist, but I always laughed as a child because I was a feminist, but my mom embodied feminism to me, yet she did not want to take that label. But I think in terms of, you know, how things have changed over time, I mean, black women are supposed to be the most educated demographic, yet we're not claiming our prizes. Is that maybe that we don't think that we're worthy of the prize because we haven't really come into our feminist human rights, we are deserving mindset? That's
but the crazy part about that, do we know what our prize is?
Yes, well, whatever that is.
Because so many times we were told, go to school, get your education, and then you still had to come home because we didn't embrace the feminist part of it and still, quote unquote, do the women's work, and we were degree professionals. You were getting ready to say, Nigeria?
Well, I was just going to talk about, you know, women in the workplace, and that I've had experiences in which I once worked, I used to work in retail, and I worked in a sporting goods store, that's very like male driven, male dominated, and so there would be women in the workplace, and some of them would make sure that their uniform was sleek, and you could see that they were a woman. And I wanted everything. I didn't want that to be a dynamic that affected my sales, like the cute girl gets all the sales. I wanted to just sell because I was there and I was doing well. But once I became a manager, that's when I met a lot of opposition from the staff. And I sent one young man home because he came in like he was in violation of like every rule. He was late, he had a do-rag on, every rule you could break, he was in violation of. And when I was like, you have to go home, he was like, no, he's not going home. And I'm like, what? Wait, what? And he goes in the back and he's talking. He's like, oh, she must be tripping. She's on her period today. I'm not going home unless the other manager sends me home. When the other manager was a man. You're violating every rule. I'm crazy. But you need a man to tell you to go home, but you know you're wrong, but I'm crazy. What is happening here? But I'm thankful for that man because he was my partner in that situation. He came down, he overheard everything, and he said, what are you doing here? Didn't Nigeria send you home?
Exactly.
And he was like, are you sending me home? No, she sent you home. You don't belong here, do you?
All right, ladies. We can agree. We've had a great conversation about this book. Now, what are your final thoughts, Dina?
Should we all be feminists? Yes. I think it's obvious if you value yourself as a human being. It's a basic human right.
All right, Margarita, what's yours?
I think we should all be feminists, especially with different races and to a certain extent as well. We got a lot of work to do.
All right, Nigeria.
Piggybacking off what Margarita said, I think we should all be feminists, but shades of feminists. At the end of the day, we should all be treated well, no matter what our gender is.
Exactly. And Afi?
I think regardless if you identify as a feminist, we should really pay attention to forming allies with other oppressed communities.
And Janelle, what are your final thoughts?
As we spoke about, there are many different compartments of feminism, and it's really important that each department respects each other. Right. It's whether it's outside or inside your own ethnicity.
One of the main takeaways that I would have to say is that I agree with everyone. But most of all, we just need to respect each other. And if we respect each other and what we're doing, then we wouldn't have to worry about being compartmentalized. And I really enjoyed this book, and we should all be feminists because she does direct us that way at the end of the book, is that we should all be feminists.
And we should be.
We hope that you've enjoyed this book. We should all be feminists. Afi, you know you have to help me. By
Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
Thank you so much. And thank you for watching. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, share your comments. Let's keep this conversation growing and going. And remember, who's telling your story?
The team!